What is going on, guys? This is Gene Jensen, and it is time for another Friday Night Live. All right, welcome everybody. Man, oh man, what a good week it's been. Mostly business. I finally got a chance to go out and go fishing the last couple of days. Still hurt with every hook set and every cast, but it wasn't as bad as it's been. So hopefully my arms are healing and I'll be able to get out a little bit more. Worked on a little bit of a video for basically about the KBF challenge series that's happening right now. Their monthly series, or if you guys are interested in getting into kayak bass fishing or kayak tournaments, this video is going to be for you guys. I've got a few little finishing touches to do to it and I'll be all done, but I'm excited about that video. It's going to be fun. I'm in the middle of trying to get caught up. I'm a little behind on that tournament. I'm actually way behind. I'm in like 11th. And so I've got 5 or 6 more, I think 6 more days to lay the hammer down and see if I can't get over 100 inches. So, but anyway, it is what it is. What's up, Stephen Guthrie? How are you? John Larson. Hey, everybody, John Larson painted that picture right there. That one, the one that I hang crooked to bug all you guys with OCD. I really appreciate it, John. That's an awesome picture. I don't think I'm going to change it anytime soon. Let's see. What's up, Round Trap Fishing and Douglas Fannin? How are y'all? Wait a minute. Hey, Gene, I'm pretty sure I saw you on an Alumacraft billboard the other day. Dude, if you see it again, take a picture. I've never been on a billboard. Holy cow. Oh, man. I did do a photo shoot with them last summer. So in the new Pro 20, the 20-foot Alumacraft Pro, I think it's 220 is it called? I can't remember. But anyway, that was a lot of fun. So Ron Abner from Duluth, Georgia, how's it going? RJ Castings, how are you, man? I've been following you on, I think on Facebook, if I remember correctly. A couple of your posts the last couple of days. We'll get to your question here just a little bit. But some really cool things. I'm going to wait till a few more people get on. And then I've got something I want to ask you guys your opinion. So let's see. Nick Barrett says that Southern Ontario private campgrounds and boat launches and public are opening this weekend. That's awesome, man. That's awesome. What's going on? Casey Gray, what's going on? I am trying to be safe. I'm broke. Look at this tan line from my wrist brace. It starts right here and goes to right there. That's about the ugliest tan line in the world. But I've been wearing it almost religiously. I've got tendonitis right here, or anyway, it's not carpal tunnel, but it's pretty close to it. And then I've got tendonitis in this elbow right here, and it hurts when I set the hook and cast. But it's getting better. It's healing. I'm doing what the physical therapist tells me to do, and really taking it easy. I did go fishing yesterday, but I didn't fish. I'm literally limited to being able to fish maybe a Texas rig. I can't even touch a spinning rod. It hurts too bad. So can I do a glide bait video? I've been working on learning more about glide baits for the last year and a half. I'm almost to the point where I'm confident in teaching it. So, but yeah, it is what it is. Okay. So I got a question to ask you guys. I have 8.5 acres right here on my little farm. I bought a horse farm 4 years ago. Don't have any horses, thank the Lord. And the property has a lot of mud. It's the water table's real close to the surface. And so I have wet spots on the property. And I think I want to make some ponds. But do you guys want to see a video or see videos over the next year of me building ponds in order to grow trophy bass? So the idea is I've got a spot to make some really small ponds where I can grow out some bluegill. Then I take the bluegill out of those ponds as they grow and as they spawn and get, I'll pull the babies at about $1 size. seine them out and move them over to a bigger pond I want to build over here and grow some big bass, but no bass in the bluegill ponds, only over in the bigger lake. And I'm not sure, I haven't measured how much it's going to be. The bigger lake, I'm talking maybe only an acre, maybe acre, maybe just a little over. So we'll see. But anyway, your opinions. Would you actually watch it? Because a lot of it's going to be boring. I got to get a tractor. I've got to dig a hole, and I don't know what I'm doing really. I know how to grow big bass, but I don't know how to make all the rest of it happen. So we will see. We will see. All right. So that's awesome. Oh, good. Yeah, hopefully you guys learned something. My goal, I'm thinking of it as I'm building it, because I'm going to build structure and drops and rock piles and that kind of stuff. I'm really going to take my time with it. And I think I'll be able to use it to teach you guys how bass relates to that kind of cover and structure and what you're looking for. I don't know. I think I'm smarter than I really am, but I'm definitely going to try. So we would watch you digging it by hand. Daniel, no way. I'm too old. Maybe I'll have my kids dig it, but they just dug ditches in my garden, and it was like pulling teeth out of an alligator to try to get them to do it. Let's see. Have you seen The Life of Marty? I've seen a couple of Marty's new videos. I won't be able to do it daily, but definitely I'm thinking maybe 2 or 3 videos a month. But that would be pretty cool. So, all right. So that's Dave Carver. Ask Bob Luss. You believe me? I have already sent him a message. I've known Bob for 12 years. So, yeah, I'll definitely ask him. I'm going to be picking his brain like crazy as I'm doing this. So, but the soil should be good. Hopefully, if I get down to 8 feet and it's crappy, I may be in trouble, but we'll see. Goodness. Michael Wildman. Hey man, I still got your power pole steak. I'll bring it to you as soon as I get a chance. But that reminds me, I gotta get them to mail me the new spike, or the new tip for the spike. So what kind of line do I use? I use Seaguar AbrazeX fluorocarbon and Seaguar Smackdown braid. I also use Seaguar Invisex every once in a while. So I think it'll be pretty cool. Well, good. I'm glad you guys like it. You guys are my biggest fans, so I really appreciate your opinion. I don't understand this question. You don't do that. Brings back memories of my dad torturing us digging ditches. I think my kids would totally agree with you. I have my garden. I have a real clay soil, so I have to mound up my garden so it drains well. And so they dug 17 ditches that are 60 feet long and about 8 to 10 inches deep. So yeah, I worked them to death the last couple of weeks, but they finished, and I couldn't help them, and it drove me nuts not being able to dig with them. So anyway, hey, you guys, be sure to hit the thumbs up button while I'm thinking about it. And if you're new here, subscribe. All right, so let's get to some question and answers and stuff like that. Let's talk about what's going on right now. We got a shad spawn going on here in the south. The bass are done spawning. The water temperature dropped into the 60s, which is the strangest thing in the world because it's been so cold. But let's see. Jamie Bird, I am not a smallmouth expert, especially I've been to Dale Hollow for 2 days kayak fishing. I caught 2 fish. The smallmouth experience, Ben Nowak is probably on YouTube the one expert I would recommend you go to for smallmouth. Him and Alex Rudd are best friends, so I always would recommend you go with him. I don't know a whole lot about. I know how to catch them when they're there. I just not 100% sure about where to find them sometimes. So I need more experience. I'm really good at finding them on rivers, but that's about it. Tips for fishing circular pond with little to no structure or difference in the banks. The biggest thing about having something that has no structure, I have a hard time believing it has no structure, unless it is, drops down from the bank and is flat all the way across. There's always some little bitty drops, some grass edges, maybe a tree laying in the water, something that's different. Let me put it into perspective. If you take a bunch of bass and you put them in a swimming pool that's all blue, they're going to roam and roam and roam and roam and roam. But the minute you drop a black dot, it doesn't matter how big it is, little or big, into the bottom of that swimming pool, they will all migrate and end up hanging out right there on that black dot. So to put that in perspective with your lake, what I would do is I would look for something different. If there's nothing different, then take a brick, tie it to a brush pile, throw that brush pile out in the water, and there you have a dot. And that's where all the bass will be. So look for something different. Look for edges of grass lines or trees or stuff like that, and you'll catch them. So Casey Gray, man, thanks for the $20. Golly, you guys that donate are freaking awesome. You are the man. $20. And Chris Draper, thanks for the $5, man. He says, okay, so you need to come to Istapoga. Oh, don't get me started. I love that. I love the looks of that lake when I see it on video. They are on fire. Maybe set up a 2-hour flipping or topwater seminar while you're here. That would be awesome. Oh, goodness. I'm not traveling right now just because we're trying to get everything settled. My wife is about done with work for the year because she's a school nurse, but she's doing a bunch of stuff on the side. So I'm kind of sticking close to home, but it won't be long. Let's see. All right, let me get caught back up with comments. What lures to throw on a Fate Black 7.6 medium or 6.7 medium heavy? 6.7 medium heavy. For me, a short rod like a 6.7 is an accurate rod. So I'm using lures that would match for a medium heavy that I need to get into pinpoint locations, like if I'm fishing docks or laydowns or trying to skip something underneath overhangs and that kind of stuff. Texas rig, you're going to have 15, 17, or 20-pound test. 20's pushing it. 20 just doesn't perform very well on a medium heavy rod, just because it's so thick. But Texas rigs, jigs, no, not a Carolina rig because I fish those on heavy stuff. But anything you're going to cast, be a really good spinnerbait rod, to be honest with you. Enough beef behind it, be able to set the hook pretty good. But mainly I think of a short rod for anything is an accurate rod that I'm going to fish around stuff I need to make pinpoint cast. So Ron Abner says, I'm going to my friend's private lake next week. It's probably 6 acres. I plan on using Ned rig, drop shot, and chatterbaits. What would you recommend? Yes. If it's 6 acres, if it's an older pond, it's going to have a lot of sediment down at the bottom of it. And my favorite thing to do with a pond and a Ned rig, and you guys that have watched this a lot know this, you throw it out, you let it fall on somewhat of on a slack line, let it get to the bottom, flip your bail on your spinning rod, and just start to reel and shake your rod a little bit and reel, just real slow to where that thing is just off the bottom and it's just swimming and it's doing this number. That's wrecking them, especially if it's a soft bottom. The bass are down there. They're going to hit them. Start with the deepest part of the lake and work your way around. So super clear water, a lot of pressure, water temp 57, 59. Where are the fish? 57, 59. They're pushing back into pockets. They're getting ready to spawn. They're going to be in shallow water. And if you cover that water with and I'm gonna give you a color, but you can try other colors too, but some type of a red or orange crankbait or chatterbait. Chatterbait can be white also, but do that, dude, and you'll find them. They're trying to spawn, so you need to go find those spawning areas. So Jamie Bird, thanks for the $10, brother. Y'all are awesome. Goodness gracious. All right. When does the shad spawns happen? It's all about water temp. Is it all about water temp? Heard they spawn in about the same temp as bass. It's pretty much all about the water temp. So the bass will spawn, they're done spawning, they turn around, and the shad will spawn 72 degrees. Now, right now on some of the lakes around here, because of this cold spell, has dropped the water temperature down from 75 to 68. But the shad are still spawning. But once it reaches 72, it seems like they go ahead and start spawning, and they look for hard spots like riprap, rocks, logs laying in the water, super, super shallow. The way you can tell is you get there just as the sun starts, or just as it starts to get light. You look along the bank and look along the shallows, and if you see shad ticking and bumping up against hard things, they're going to be there. Other places they spawn: seawalls, pontoon boats, the floating docks, dock posts, anywhere around there, you'll see them. And if you got shad in your lake, they're going to be spawning. So, absolutely, I love it, dude. I wish I could use a popper right now. I can't walk anything with this wrist because I'm broke and I'm old. John Chrisman, man, thanks for the $10. Man, you guys are freaking awesome. You're the GOAT, bro. Oh man, let's see. All right, let me jump ahead just a hair. ISG trauma. You work in a trauma center? I did for 20 years. Anyway, would you have any thoughts, or would you know why I'm having trouble with braided lines snapping randomly at the spool on my Lew's baitcaster combo? Happened 3 different times on 3 different test braids and brands. I would check your guides. I bet you one of your guides is cracked. It's the only thing I can think of is if you've got a cracked guide insert, it will work that braid and weaken it. It's just like pulling the threads out of any kind of a yarn or rope. Eventually, it's going to get so weak it breaks. That's one of the things I check. I don't think Power Pole has, or Power Pro has, the issues they used to have, where if you bought a spool, every once in a while you'd get a spool that was in the middle. You'd get a splice where they spliced when they had to change spools out and they spliced one together. You'd get a splice and it'd be a weak spot and it would actually break as you were putting it on sometimes. I don't think they have that problem anymore. I think they've started to totally start over and get rid of the splices. So braid takes a long time to make. That's why, I mean, literally this much braid, or an inch of braid, takes just like 5 minutes to make. It's crazy. Anyway, so that's what I would check. I check your guide. So southern Wisconsin lake, water temp in the mid to low 60s. And I want to catch some bass. Any tips? Go shallow. They're up shallow. They're getting ready to spawn, or they're spawning. Look for, if you're in southern Wisconsin, I'm guessing your lake probably has grass in it. They'll be in the holes in the grass. They'll be somewhere close to deep water, but still in the 0 to 5 foot depth. And throw something like a spinnerbait or chatterbait, something moving to find them, and then slow down. They'll either hit it, they'll catch them, they'll either bump it, or they'll follow it back to the boat. So, what size tungsten weight should I start using a reel set on? So what he's talking about, Dylan's talking about, is there comes a point in time where your weight, whether it be a jig or a weight, a tungsten weight, a bullet weight, or whatever, is so big that when you set the hook like you normally would, it blows the fish's mouth open before the hook gets a chance to penetrate, and everything comes out. Happens a lot in punching when you're using those 1 1/4 to 2 ounce weights. So what I would do is I start to reel set it at 3/4 of an ounce, because that weight starts to get a little beefy. And I really pay attention to reel setting. I do it with football jigs. I do it with big-headed, any big-headed jigs. But what it is you when you feel the bite, you start to reel into the fish until your rod just starts to bow, and then you set the hook on that tight line, and that pulls that weight up against the fish's mouth, and he's still got his mouth closed. And then when you pull it, it pops that weight loose without blowing his mouth open, if that makes sense. So Venom's AKU, man, thanks for the $20. Golly, you guys freaking rock. Finally getting some warm weather. What do you think? I think it's great. My tomatoes almost died last week. I covered them when it got close to freezing, but they got pissed at me. So I'm working on helping them. Hello, Gene. I'm in Tennessee and going to Chickamauga tomorrow, hoping to get higher on KBF State Challenge board. Any pointers for beginners? I haven't heard what's going on at Chick right now. but literally it's the shad spawn. Grab a popper, grab a white swim jig, put a small trailer on it. What I like to do, go watch my swim jig video. You'll see what I'm talking about. But I take a Rage Menace, a white one, and I turn it sideways, put it on the hook, and I rip one of the claws off. So it's just got one claw, and it looks like a little bait fish swimming. That's my favorite way to do it. Spinner bait will work, anything, but you want to get there at first light and fish the seawalls and the docks and anywhere along there until the sun gets on the water, and then that bite goes away, and you've got to go out offshore and fish points and stuff like that. But that's what I'd be doing right now. Guaranteed the shad are spawning. Daniel, I don't fish for cats on purpose. My go-to bait is always chicken liver, and that's only when I want to go fishing with my kids. I've been cut too many times by little catfish to really like to catch them. So, but yeah, definitely. Bobby Tony Fitch says, love the stream. Can you shout out my sis, Gina Tools? Gina Tools. That's awesome. What's the best bait for Upper Michigan? Because we are finally getting some warm weather. I can't tell you what the best bait is. The best thing to do is to use something moving until you find them, and then slow down with a jig or something like that. It's exactly what I would do. So there's a lot more to it than just that. It just, asking what the best is. I have no clue. The bass is what tells you. That's why we keep so many rods and reels and lures in the boat. Chad Burton, thanks for the $20. He says, I have an opportunity to fish Lake Okeechobee last week of June. Any thoughts, ideas, or resources? Do you guide or offer personalized instruction on the water? I don't guide. It's one of those things I'm still trying to figure out whether I can do. If I do it, it's going to be like next year or the year after. Lake Okeechobee in June. In June, the bass on the Florida bass that are down in Okeechobee, and I haven't been to Okeechobee in 3 years, so I don't know what the grass is doing right now. But you go find the thickest patch of grass that you can find, and you punch it, and you start looking at those areas. They might be on that grass edges. Watch some of Mikey Ball's old videos when he used to fish Okeechobee all the time. He lives in Alabama now, but I always watched him before I went to Okeechobee. But like I said, I haven't been there 3 years, and every single year the grass is different. And so you're fishing grass edges, and you're fishing thick patches of grass. If you find hydrilla, fish it, because the bass are going to migrate to that hydrilla because it creates more oxygen in the water than any other grass. And thanks for the $20, brother. I appreciate it. Drew Morgan, thanks for the 10, man. You're awesome. Holy cow. Stillhouse, Hollow Lake, any tips? I have never even been there. So Richard, thanks for the $5, bro. I appreciate you. Fishing Joe, are you using a popper right now? If so, what are the best conditions and things to look for? And what is your go-to retrieval and color on the popper? I'm not using one right now because my wrist is injured, and that's the wrist I work a popper and a walking bait with. But I would be using it starting at 65 degrees and all the way through the summer, early in the morning, along shallow cover and along, anywhere that it's shallow and there's a lot of cover, especially if the shad are spawning. Go-to retrieval is you throw it out. What I like to do is throw it out, let it sit for a couple of 3 or 4, maybe 5 seconds, let the ripples get away from the bait, and then just go pop, pop, pause, pop, 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 pause, and don't jerk it too hard. You just a little pops. And the bass will tell you how they want it, really, but that's how I always start. What's the best knot for braid? The only knot I use for braid if I'm not tying on a leader is a Palomar knot. The only knot. I don't care what anybody says. I've never had a problem with a Palomar knot. Even when I'm punching, I don't snell the knot at all when I'm punching. I used to, and I'd lose a lot of fish. And the minute I went back to the Palomar knot, I stopped losing fish. So let's see. Whew, I got to catch my breath. Y'all got me talking 100 miles a minute. Let's see. Gene, do you use backing on casting reels before putting braid on to save money? Your opinion? I do. And I've got a video that I made a couple of years ago about this, but I'll explain what I do. Braid typically has enough line on the spool to put on 2 different spools if you know how much backing to put on. And so I kind of played around with that, and I know about how much, depending on what spool I'm using, I know how much backing to put on. But I take the braid out in the yard and I tie it just loosely to a tree. And no, I don't. I wrap it around the limb on a little bush that I have right outside the yard. And I grab one end and I grab the spool and I bring it out until I have 2 halves of the line. And then I go back to the tree and I cut it. So I got 2 lengths of braid off that spool that are exactly the same. And I put them on the reels. Now, the reason this saves money is you use that for a season and it gets worn out and messed up on that end. And you take another spool, you hook that messed up line onto that spool with the same amount of backing and reel it on, and you've got brand new braid on the other end. So you can make that braid last 2 or 3 years on each of those lengths, and you can save a ton of money. Braid lasts for a long time. I mean, and then when it loses color, I just take a black Sharpie and I mark and I color it. So they actually make the markers now that will color your braid the exact same color it was. Whew. John Crispin, got any bank fishing tips? Okay. What I always say about bank fishing, now I bank fished for 12 years before I bought my first boat. And I always start at the deepest water in the area of the lake that I'm fishing, because the bass use that deep water for safety to get out and get away when things happen, weather change or anything else. So they like to be somewhere close to that deep water. So I start on the steepest bank that I can safely fish, and I work my way away from it. And fishing usually finesse stuff, usually a worm. I don't fish a whole lot of crankbaits because I'll lose them. Spinnerbait maybe, but I'm just kind of working around until I find a concentration of fish. And the whole time you're walking the bank, watch for little bait fish, because you'll get to an area of the lake that has nothing. Get out of there. But then as you're walking along, you'll start seeing more and more fish, more and more little bluegill and more little bait. And the more life and activity you see, the more likely there is going to be a concentration of bass there that you can catch. So that's my tips for that, man. Oh, shoo, let's see. Tim, I'm not going to try to pronounce your last name. Lure or anyway. I just got my SS127, debating on putting on a bow-mounted trolling motor. What are your thoughts on trolling motors? Thanks. I am about to put a motor guide on the front of mine. Get one. I'm going to have one with spot lock. What's the motor guide? MHI. Oh goodness. XI5 is what I'm going to, and I'm dyslexic with numbers, so it sucks. But XI5 is what I'm going to put on the front of mine. It's got spot lock. It's got everything I'm gonna need. And the only thing I'm worried about is batteries. So maybe I'll have to lighten my load a little bit. But dude, I'm all for them, man. I've got a Torqeedo on the back. I just got the new Torqeedo 1104. Put it on the back. It's basically equivalent of a 3 horsepower motor, and it pushes my kayak at about 6.1 miles an hour. So yeah, I'm all for them, dude. And thanks for the $10, brother. I really appreciate it. What size motor on your boat? Need a professional opinion on motor size. Don't want to regret my purchase. I always get the biggest motor that my boat can handle. And that's because I can. Now, if it's a budget thing, just get them, and you can't afford the biggest one, try to get the middle of the road. Don't get the lowest one that you can. Like a 40 horsepower on a 19-foot boat is dumb, in my opinion. A 90, when most 19-foot aluminum boats are like 115 horse rated, 90 is fine. You'll go 40 to 42 miles an hour and you're good. So middle of the road to the highest one you can get is good. And I absolutely love my Evinrude G2. It's awesome. It's awesome. So I have the Evinrude E-Tech Generation 2 is what I've got. 115 horse, and it is a great motor, and boy, does it have some balls. I know it's a 2-stroke, but I've had it for a year, and I've only gone through 3 gallons of oil. So actually 2.5, almost 3 gallons of oil. So Big Red Bass, what's going on, man? This is for the Mojo rig. What weight do you use, and what does the bite feel like? I make my own weights for the Mojo rig. I get the Do It lure body mold. It makes the weights for like a rooster tail, like an inline spinner. Those weights, the noses of them are a lot thinner than the ones you can buy at Bass Pro Shop. Bass Pro makes them, but the noses come the weights come through the grass a little bit better, and the bite feels like a Carolina rig bite. Thump, and then they just start to swim off with it. So, any suggestions for a flipping pitching reel under $100? And do you recommend dual magnetic or centrifugal brakes? I'm not too concerned about what the brakes are. I like to have centrifugal brakes just because I like to be able to know what adjust them and know what it is. But I've never had a problem with magnetic brakes. No, I knew how to set those too. But anyway, it doesn't matter to me. For $100, if you're willing to spend 120, the 13 Fishing Inception is an absolute great workhorse of a reel. It's got that clunky feel of a reel that's going to last you a long time, and I've tried to beat those up. They're really good. $100. The Origin C is a pretty good reel, but literally for $20 more, I'd go to the Inception. So, I completely a snake fishing challenge. And after the stream, I'm going to go edit the video. Oh, okay. Thanks for spamming my channel. Favorite lures for ultra clear fishing. Ultra clear. I'm thinking drop shots. Usually what I go to, something really light line, fluorocarbon line, but drop shot, shaky head, Ned rig, that kind of stuff. I really don't worry too much about clear water. I'll throw a little baby swim bait, a little swim bait on a jig head, that kind of stuff. But the biggest thing is clear water. You want baits that if you hold up to the sun, you can see the bait. You can see the sun through the bait. You want clearer baits, or green pumpkin, but natural colors is what you're looking for. So, Ryan Yates, are you a baseball fan? Yes, I am. My son is a bigger baseball fan than I am. He can tell you the stats of any Major League Baseball player in Major League Baseball. He's amazing when it comes to that kind of stuff. But I've been a Braves fan since I could walk. Way back in the 70s, I was a Braves fan when they were losing for everything. Hey, Fluke, going out on the boat for the first time, watched your videos. Any other tips? I'm typically a kayak guy. Yeah. There's not much difference from a kayak to a boat fishing wise. Biggest thing is just be safe, man. If you're driving it, just be really safe. It's your first time on the boat. If somebody else is driving it, knock them in the nugget if they're not safe. But your PFD can, for me personally, just follow the laws. If it's a stable boat, you don't really have to have your PFD close. And when that big motor's on, put your PFD on. That's kind of how I live by it. If the water's really, really cold, that's a different story. I always have my PFD on when it's cold. But anyway, what types of blades do you like for your spinner baits? Willow, Colorado, Indiana. I like Colorado blades for most of the ones I throw. Willow leaf when their bait fish are spawning, when they've got, like right now, the shatter spawning, that kind of stuff, or when I'm burning a bait. When I want to fish a spinner bait really, really fast, I try to pull one out that has a willow leaf on it. So, what's my favorite trailer for a green pumpkin chatterbait trying to replicate bluegill? Thanks. Actually, my favorite trailer is the Jerk, the 13 Fishing Jerk, which wasn't my favorite trailer until this spring. And I'd use a Jerk in green pumpkin, and I'd dip the back end of it in some chartreuse JJ's Magic to give you that chartreuse tail, like what a bluegill has. That's usually the only thing I try to match on a bluegill is that tail moving that's a little chartreuse. Another good bait, if the bluegill, what I do when their bluegill are spawning is I like to downsize my chatterbaits and downsize my swim jigs and put a green pumpkin finesse or a rage menace on there. And like I said, turn it sideways and put it on, and then break off one of the claws and dip that claw in chartreuse JJ's. So it's exactly what I do. Thanks, Big Red. Thanks, man. You're always welcome in these chats. Let's see. Ever fish Stone Mountain Lake? I have not. I know a lot of people that have. I used to fish the electric boat tournaments that were in Georgia, and I never went to Stone Mountain. I always skipped that tournament for some reason. But I know that there's a place if you go off. I'm thinking Ryan used to tell me about this place. If you took a left out of the boat ramp, went all the way back as far as you could, there's a hump out in the middle that he used to fish all the time. But that's all I remember, and I can't believe I remember that after 15, 20 years. What's your favorite drop shot bait? I love the robo worms when fishing this technique, but was wanting to experience with some other deals, maybe something that floats. Let me tell you one that I've tried that I really like. I'm trying to remember what it's called. It's called the half shell. Strike King. Now, this is a funny story. Strike King Rage Tail. It's made by Rage Tail, and you guys know I'm a huge Rage Tail fan. I'm not sponsored by him, nothing. I'm friends with the guy that invented Rage Tail. I'm still not sponsored by him, but I love their baits. And this is called a half shell. And I think it was one of the pros, and I think it was Greg Hackney. He was starting to catch him on a drop shot, and he ran out of baits. And you know him, he's a flipper, so he didn't have a lot of drop shot baits on the boat. But he looked down the bottom of the boat and had some rage bugs down there that were all torn up. And he took his scissors and he cut them in half straight up the middle, put them on a drop shot, and started to slay fish. So all of a sudden, the next year, Rage comes out with the half shell, which is basically that's what it is. It's a rage bug cut in half, and it absolutely wrecks them. That's a good one. Another one of my favorites, just a Zoom Finesse worm. That's usually all I throw though. So, Tyler, dude, man, you gotta stop giving me money, man. He says, thanks for the $25, bro. Is a 7'3" heavy fast action rod good to throw a spook or other walking bait on? What else can I throw on that rod? A heavy fast action. I would not throw a spook. There's not enough tip in that rod. It doesn't flex enough. A heavy 7'3" heavy fast action is my jig rod, is my flipping rod. No, my pitching rod. I'm sorry. I'll say flipping when I mean pitching because that's typically what I do. But anyway, so you got to have a little bit of flex in that tip to be able to walk a spook or something like that. Now, if I was walking a pencil popper, which is like an 8-inch spook, then I would probably use a medium heavy fast action rod, but not a heavy. So other things you can throw on an Alabama rig, but jig, Texas rig, that kind of stuff is a 7'3" heavy. That is my favorite length and action of for a flipping and a jig rod. So number one rule for boating: don't fall in. Amen to that. How often do you retie your leaders? Do you retie just because of length or based on water wear and tear? Before the FG knot, I would retie 2 or 3 or 4 times a day because of wear and tear. And then when I learned to tie the FG knot, I retie when that leader gets down to about 2 feet long. And I start with about an 18-foot leader. And so I will retie once a month, once every couple of weeks, depending on how hard I'm fishing that particular rod. But that knot is so good at protecting your fluorocarbon from getting worn out that I literally do not touch it until that leader gets down short. And that's why the FG knot is so good for me. I used to tie the improved Albright, or Alberto knot is what it's called. A lot of people call it Alberto. But anyway, I used to tie it, and because that braid or that fluorocarbon makes a 90 degree or 180 degree turn in that knot, where that turn is hits the guides on the way out. And as it hits the guides on its way out, it wears out and wears out and wears out. And it's got a shelf life of number of casts. But the FG knot, there is no shelf life for casts. It will last thousands and thousands of casts unless you tied it wrong. All right. Let's see. Ever fish the Rage Tail Anaconda worms? Yes, I have. Most of the ones that he came out with several years ago in that time frame, the Anaconda, the Rage Bug, that kind of stuff. I fished them as prototypes because that's when him and I saw each other a lot more. And the Anaconda is a really good Carolina rig rod or worm, Carolina rig worm, very good Carolina rig worm. And it's a very good Texas rig worm, especially in June, May, June around here in Georgia. And as you get, as the water temperature gets up into the high 70s, it's good other places. Really, really good, big worm. Andrew Goldston, I have a 1 1/3 ounce live target bluegill swim bait. What is the best rod to use? I have a couple of medium spinning combos and one medium heavy bait casting combo. You might be able to throw it on the medium heavy. Yeah, you should be able to. It's something you're just going to have to let it load up behind you real careful and cast it and kind of lob cast it. A heavy fast action or a heavy moderate action rod would be best, but I'm not saying go buy a rod just for that swim bait. So if your medium heavy is kind of a stiff medium heavy bait caster, you should be okay. But yeah, 1 1/2 ounces, that's not super heavy. How do you fish a smaller Sebile Magic swimmer? I don't know if I think I have a couple of those. The little ones, the little 5-inch ones, I think they are. I used to throw them on a medium moderate action rod, and I just throw them out, let them sink a little bit, fish them on fluorocarbon line because the fluorocarbon helps it get a little deeper. And I'll just slowly reel it, maybe twitch it a couple times, but mostly just slowly reel it. Cold train fishing. No, I've never used a chug bug. I've had one, but I've never used it. I put fluorocarbon 8-pound on my spinning reel, and I am having problems with backlash. Any pointers? The best thing that I've ever done, and it took 2 years for a buddy of mine to convince me of this, but the best thing I've ever done is gone to mainline braid, 15 to 20 pound test mainline braid, and tie fluorocarbon leaders on, because that braid is so good on a spinning rod. What you have is you have a line twist. So you've got an option. If you're in a boat, you basically let your line out behind the boat as you're going real slow, and just keep letting your line out without anything tied on, and just let it drag behind the boat for about 40. Once you get it all the way out, let it drag behind the boat for about 30 or 40 more seconds, then reel it back in. And you just got the line twist out of your line, and it will last a little bit longer. It'll be a little bit more manageable. If you're bank fishing, if you don't have a boat to do this, what I do is I find a tree. Seriously, I find a tree and I tie a sinker onto the back end. Usually, if I have a drop shot, I just clip a drop shot sinker onto the end of the line, and I find where I can cast over that tree and get that sinker to fall back down. So I'm looking for, in Georgia, we're looking for big pine trees with one limb hanging over the side or something like that. Throw it over that limb and let that sinker come down. You can do one of two things. Just let the sinker hang until it stops spinning, or you can take that sinker off, and that braid or that fluorocarbon will immediately start to spin out, and then reel it back on your reel, and you've got most of your line twist out. Not 100%, but it works. That was like next level genius stuff right there, guys. Never fished Lake Seed. You guys be sure to hit the thumbs up while you're sitting there. We got 223 people watching. I'm sorry I'm boring you guys to death. Any tips for Louisiana bank fishing borrow pits? I'm struggling to catch fish. I don't know what your watercolor is, but look at the watercolor. Choose your colors according to the water clarity watercolor. Look up that video, because it's a whole 20-minute long video, or more, probably more than that. And then the best thing to do with light, if it's super clear, is just go light line, fish really, really slow. It's the first thing that comes to my mind. Keith Chadwell over on Facebook says, you know anything on Pickwick? Any tips, bait selection? Me and the wife headed there tomorrow, be there around the Waterloo area. I don't. Same thing though with that I would with chick. I bet you money that the shad are spawning. Get there early before that sun gets on the water, because once the sun gets bright on that water, the shad spawn is gone and the bass are gone. So get there, go hit seawalls, hit boat docks and pontoon boats, and anywhere you see the shad, ticking the surface as they're spawning. So let's see. What is a great baitcaster beginner combo? I fish hard spinning reels, which was me about 15 years ago or so. Hard spinning reels, but I got to get used to a baitcaster. Any suggestions? I'm going to give you kind of a price range. $75 baitcasting reel is 60 would be the cheapest one I buy. If I'm looking for one for a beginner, for somebody who wants to learn without getting frustrated. So about $60 and to $100 if you really want to splurge. Get a medium heavy, fast action rod, whichever one you can afford, and get out in your yard and practice. It would be the best thing. Anything more expensive is a reel that's going to last you a lot longer. But if you're just looking and you're not sure if you're going to like it or not, $60 to $70 or $75. So Team Jesus Outdoors, how are you healing? I'm healing okay. It still hurts to cast and set the hook. I lost a giant yesterday. I don't know how big it was, but it was screaming, and never got the hook in him because I don't have a lot of hooks that power on either hand. You'll see me in the videos. I'm setting the hook with both hands. I'm looking like a goofball trying to set the hook. So, all right, let me get caught back up. What is a great baitcaster beginner? Oh, I already read that one. I was going to get caught back up. I read the same thing all over again. Have you ever used Zoom Pumpkin Fire U-tail much? I have not. Can you tell me anything about Reelfoot Lake in Tennessee? I've never fished Reelfoot. Let's see. Any tips for kayak anchoring on rivers? Take out poles versus anchor versus drag chain. Best location, bow or stern mount. I like to fish upstream, so my anchor hangs off the front of the boat. I use a 8 to a 10-pound kettlebell is what I use. I like a kettlebell because the handle is so big on a kettlebell that literally it prevents that thing from getting snagged in rocks. You may snag and have to go past it and pull it, but it doesn't get snagged up. A drag chain gets snagged. You're going to lose one about every 20 to 30 trips is what you're going to do with a drag chain. With a stakeout pole, most of the rivers I fish have so much rock, stakeout poles are useless. So an anchor off the front with a kettlebell, steel kettlebell. You can also use an anchor trolley if you want to anchor between, upstream and downstream, but I don't. So, and literally if I get a bite as I'm working down current, first thing I do after I set the hook and gain control of the fish is I drop my anchor so I can spin around and just kind of hang out with the fish and not have to worry about running in any rapids or anything else. Once the shad spawn is over, what do you typically throw? I usually go out deep. I'm usually fishing drops, ledges, points, offshore structure, be it in my kayak or in my boat, and I'm throwing a Carolina rig. I'm dragging a worm. I'm just looking for that offshore stuff. And I'm doing a lot of deep diving crankbaits and that kind of stuff. So definitely worth learning how to read a map and that kind of stuff in order to find that. So have you ever fished the Grand Lagoon designed by Bill Dance down in Richmond Hill, Georgia? I have not. I've fished a couple of Bill Dance lakes, but not that one. So David Fields with the $25 dono. Thanks, brother. Oh man, how's business? Says stimulus broke fish films. Keep it up. Oh man. So him and his wife, or I think his wife and kids, or somebody in his family just started a YouTube channel. So I've been kind of watching that a little bit. They need to make a lot of videos. That's going to be funny. They got a funny family. Any tips on football jig fishing? I have caught fish almost every way, but struggle with dragging and slow hopping jigs. I get aggravated because I collect more muck and grass than bites. If you're collecting muck, you're not fishing the right spots for jigs. A football jig works the best when you got hard bottom. And rock is great, scattered rock, clay, banks, that kind of stuff. But if you're pulling in muck, put that sucker away and pick something else to fish. If you want to fish a jig, if you want to fish a football jig, go find points and drops. That, you know, the good thing about points and especially ledges and stuff like that is the current that pushes over those ledges prevents silt from settling. So there's always going to be a hard bottom. And so you get up on those points or get on those bluff or those ledges, and you just drag it and shake it. Don't hop it, just drag it, and you'll get bit. So, my first was a Shimano SLX for $99. Good starter. Yes, I'll have to agree with you. And it's just that price range. I don't know what it is. $60 to $100 is the price range for a good starter, and it's not going to frustrate you is the biggest thing. I'd learned on a $20 one, and I was ready to throw it through the wall within the first 2 days. And so I went and I bought back then you could buy a $50 one, and it was a pretty good one. And that's what I learned on. So that's what I finished learning on. Let's put it that way. David Sink, had my new Hobie Compass on the lake for the second time today. Biggest issue being new to kayak fishing is getting unloaded and loaded at the ramp without pissing everyone else off. Any tips? Love. Yes, this is what I do. I pull into a parking spot. I get everything ready. Rods, and I got camera gear, and I got batteries, and I got everything else. It takes me about 40 minutes to get my stuff ready. I pull into a parking spot. I get everything ready. I have one strap across that kayak, and then I go down the ramp, and I'm on a trailer. I got a trailer too, and I back it down the ramp. If I don't have a trailer, if I'm just dragging my kayak, I get it ready in a parking spot, and I pull my truck over to the closest grass access, if there is one, to the lake, and I unload it. I go park my truck and drag it down. Spend as little time on that boat ramp as possible. The worst thing to do is, and I had somebody do this to me last year when I had my boat, and I wanted to strangle them. One boat ramp, no kayak access at all, and I understood that. So I let him put it in his boat ramp. He left his kayak in the middle of the freaking boat ramp and went to go park his truck 300 yards away in the parking lot. And I didn't get a chance to yell at him before I realized he had done it. So I'm sitting there with my boat waiting for him to come back so he can move his kayak off the boat ramp. Clear the boat ramp. There. Soapbox I'm getting off of. But that's it. Get ready before you go. Are the bass still on beds on the Chick? I don't think so. If I was them, I wouldn't be on bed right now. I'd be eating shad because the shad should be spawning. Can you explain a front anchor versus rear anchor and pros and cons? I use a rear anchor. I have a PowerPole Micro in the back, and so I use that rear anchor a lot when I just want to stop, hold myself solid so I can get a really good hook set on a fish. And I do that a lot when I'm really in, and it's only good for about 6.5 feet deep. So the rest of my anchoring is off the front. And I do that because when I'm in current, specifically rivers or wind and stuff like that, I want to know exactly where my boat's going to rotate to into the wind or into the current. So I drop that off the front. If you anchor off the side in current, you will have a good chance of flipping that boat because your boat, the water will push up against one side of the boat and tilt the boat out. And so don't ever, in current and heavy wind, don't ever anchor on the side of your boat, always off the front or the back. But that's the only reason I do. And the front one's my main anchor. The power pole is just to get me solid on the ground so I can make a really good, strong, heavy hook set on a fish. So, however, fished in Louisiana, I fished redfish there about every year down in Pointe-aux-Chenes. I didn't this last year, and I regret it. Tips for fishing flooded brush going to Bull Shoals next weekend, and the lake is 30 feet higher than normal pool. It's been high for weeks. If it's still high, a lot of times what I do is I'll go to, if I have a lake that's really, really high, I want to be able to reach the bank with my cast. So if you got a bunch of brush and you can't get to the bank, or a bunch of standing timber or whatever else, and you can't get a cast all the way to dry land, I don't fish it. I'm looking for those areas where I can reach the bank, because the bass are going to be as close to that bank, eating worms and crickets and that kind of stuff that come in the water. It's like a buffet up there, and they're going to have their nose up to the buffet, and they're just going to be working the bank really, really close. So avoid the places you can't reach the bank and throw a Texas rig or something. You'll catch them. That's some of my favorite. Now, if the water's falling, those bass will pull out to the deeper cover, couple 2 or 3, 4, 5 feet deep, but the next available cover that's safe, because they don't want to get caught up there. Stephen Guthrie, taking my new bona fides out on their maiden voyage in the morning. Good luck. Good luck. Take a picture of the first fish you catch and put it on Instagram and tag me in it, dude. That would be awesome. That's awesome. How often do you reapply KVD line and lure on your line? I did an experiment years ago with KVD line and lure. And this was 10, 12 years ago, where I took 20-pound test Seaguar AbrazX. No, Seaguar InvizX. I put it on a jig rod. First thing I did before I put it on a jig rod is I sprayed the spool the night before with KVD line and lure. I put it on the rod, and I fished it for 3 years. And this was back when I was guiding on Richmond Mill Lake, and we were catching a lot of fish. I was letting my clients use it and everything else. I bet you that jig rod caught 1,000 fish. And I never changed the line because it made it last that long. I only took it off because it started to get cloudy. And I never reapplied or anything else. What KVD line and lure does, and like I said, I've been using it for years, is it offers a UV protectant for your line. It doesn't break down your line like the Real Magic does. It doesn't make your line any weaker. It just protects your line from the UV rays and makes it last longer. Whoo! And I haven't seen. The company the guy that owned it had a little bitty shop on my way to my hunting club in the middle of nowhere, Georgia. I used to swing by and see him years ago, but I haven't seen him in a long, long time. He was kind of a goofy, nerdy guy, but really fun to talk to. Thoughts on getting a $300 kayak? Buy a used one, good brands. If you can find a used one that's, new, a couple $100 more, you get a pretty good deal. Just get one you can afford. If it's your first kayak, I don't have any recommendations for which ones, because I haven't been in any of the less expensive ones. But the best thing to do is get it, take care of it, learn how to kayak fish, saving your money as you go along to buy a better one later on down the road. But get on the water and go fishing with one. That way, if you don't like kayak fishing, you can, you're only out $300. How do you choose the right pound test fluorocarbon leader for a braided main line? I'm thinking. Only time I really do that is with spinning rods these days. I used to do it with bait casters, but I found that I just don't like it. Sometimes I have too many issues with just the way I fish, I guess. I don't know. But anyway, so spinning rods. If I'm fishing, I never go above 10-pound test. But if I'm fishing like super finesse stuff, 4-6 pound test, I usually go 6 to 8. But there's no rhyme or reason. Just I don't want to have a chance of the fish seeing the line in super clear water, so I go 6 pound. If I'm fishing drop shots, shaky head, stuff like that, I'm going to set the hook hard, I'm going to go 8 pound, because I'll break 6 and I'll break 4 with my Manly hook sets. So I hope that answered your question. There's a lot more to it than that, but that's kind of where I sit and when I'm thinking about what I'm doing. What's your favorite rig for fishing from a dock? Dock, bank fishing, boat, kayak, it really doesn't matter where I'm fishing from. I'm going to have a rod that's the best rod that I that I have currently to fish whatever bait I want to fish. There's not a from a dock rod, I guess you could say. What size rods do you use in a kayak, or are they the same as in your boat? What the heck? You're going to see some kayak rods come out in the next 4 months. No, you're going to see them announced in the next 4 months that are kayak specific rods. And they're shorter, but they got shorter butts, and they're awesome, amazing. That's kind of what people are going to. Longer distance between your reel, your handle, and the end of your rod with shorter butts. And that way you can, while you're sitting down fishing, that butt doesn't hit your belly or hit anything else. It just kind of stays out of the way, but there's enough length to be able to set the hook and do what you need to with it. That's ideal. Now, before they started to come out with these rods, I would just use whatever I had in my bass boat. And really, I just always found that the ones with the longer handles would always get in the way. And I'd always, if I'm switching hands or if I'm fighting a fish and I change hands, that butt always seemed to snag on your life jacket or something. So how does someone send you a donation? Greg, on YouTube, you're on Facebook. On YouTube, they have super chat. So if you go to my YouTube channel and you log in or whatever, basically you just click there's a little money sign, I think, down at the bottom. You click on it and then you can donate and leave whatever comment or anything else you want to. That's how people donate. And it's called super chat. So what size rods do you use in a kayak? Oh, wait a second. Let me go back to that. Greg, another way you can help me and help the channel and still help yourself is I have an affiliate code for Tackle Warehouse that is down in the description of my videos where I'm talking about baits and tackle and stuff like that. You go on there, click on one of those links down in the description of the video, and it takes you to Tackle Warehouse. Anything that you buy at Tackle Warehouse, I get a small percentage of the sale. That way, it didn't cost you anything. It just comes from Tackle Warehouse. That's another way to do it. I always forget about telling you guys that. What size rod do you use in it? Oh, I already read that one. Picking up a 2017 Jackson Cuda HD tomorrow. That should be, you'll like that one. The Cuda HD is a really, really good boat. I didn't like it because I'm kind of a big dude and it seemed a little shaky for me, but a lot of big dudes I know liked it. And it is amazing in current. If you're a river fisherman, you're going to love that boat. So, and it was designed it's helped designed by Drew Gregory, who's a river rat. And so you can definitely just you're getting a good boat. I'm so old. I learned on a Ryobi piece of crap soapbox that didn't have a thumb bar. All it had was a push button on the side. I remember those on the side, and you had to sling your arm off to get any distance on your cast. Totally remember those reels. I never fished. I never learned with one, but I have fished one, and I get you, dude. You literally had to throw your arm in the water with your rod in order to get that thing to go anywhere. Hey, Fluke, Lake Juliet is killing me this year. I've thrown the kitchen sink. Do you have any suggestions? I haven't been down there in about 15 years. If they still, I don't know, did they kill the grass off? Because it used to be the grass edges were dynamite. If you could get and just start paralleling those grass edges with something, spinnerbait, crankbait, something moving, they used to be really good this time of the year. So, but if they have shad, same thing. Go to the riprap and throw a shaky head on the riprap and see what happens. What is a power pole, and can you use it on a John boat? You can use a power pole micro on a John boat. Don't get okay. What a power pole is you guys see my kayak videos where I have a little key fob that hangs off of my PFD. That key fob is my remote control for my power pole micro. Double click it down and it goes down. Go double click it up and it goes up. They have two different types of spikes. They have a fiberglass one that's for bigger boats, and they have a new kayak one, which is hollow and carbon fiber. I believe it's carbon fiber. Anyway, it's lightweight and hollow. If you try to use that on a John boat, it's going to break. So the best thing to do is to get a fiberglass one for the John boat. They run about $450, I think now. When they first came out, they were like $800, but they're a lot less now. They're either $400, $500, $600. But they're worth it. I've had one for 4 or 5 years and just never had a problem with it. So definitely worth it. B Jones 5545. Thanks for the $5, man. Just wanted to say go dogs, man. Appreciate the $5, brother. But yeah, power pole, I use it all the time on my kayak. They pretty much own that electric micro anchor world in kayak fishing. Nobody else has come out with anything to compete with that. So when do you use a chartreuse black crankbait? Anytime the water clarity is less than a foot, I almost instantly go to chartreuse and black crankbait. In my part of New Jersey, the night temps seem to finally be staying at 50 degrees Fahrenheit. This means pre-spawn starts, right? Well, pre-spawn starts when that water temperature starts to rise from the coldest it was in the wintertime. 50 degrees is when they start to get real active. About 53. We used to, the lake I guided on years ago at Kingfisher Society in North Carolina, we had feeder trained largemouth bass, and we had 50 feeders that went off twice a day. And there were a few feeders we had electronic thermometers to check the water temperature, and we could see it back at the office. 53 degrees was a switch. When it got below, in the fall, when it finally got below 50 degrees, the bass would stop feeding real heavy around those feeders. In the spring, as it got up, as soon as it hit 53 degrees, that's like a light switch, and they started feeding heavy around the feeders again. So 53 is about where they start to get active. So that was a pretty cool little experiment that we did, but it was awesome. It was like, it was money, definitely. Ed Wolf, thanks for the $5. Says, have you ever used an anchor trolley system on your kayak? Any tips? I have. I didn't like it. Managing that rope in which direction it goes, it just drove me nuts. That's why I just hang my anchor off the front. I'm thinking about trying another one now that I've got a different setup and I'm a little bit more experienced than I was when I had one. I'm thinking about trying it just to be able to reposition my boat. Maybe I'm on a lake with the wind blowing and I want to turn my boat and face it a different direction so I can get a better casting angle. That's kind of what I'm thinking. So, but yeah, it's just something I just didn't like it when I first started. All right, let's get caught up. Do I say salmon or salmon? Girl, I say salmon. I say sushi is what I say. Man, oh man. I was talking to my wife today on the way home from the store. I was like, I really am craving good sushi right now. And so that might be a date night tomorrow or the next day. Goodness gracious. You had to say it. Carbon fiber is lighter than fiberglass. Carbon fiber is lighter than fiberglass. Yes. Just got my first bait cast reel. Holy cow, I'm over time. Anyway, just got my first bait cast reel. I've always used a spinning reel. What applications would you use a bait cast reel over a spinning reel and rod? Thanks. This is actually a really good question, Kyle, and I'm going to kind of expand a little bit on it. A spinning reel is great. A spinning rod, and to be specific, a spinning rod is great for fishing light line techniques. It's a very good rod for fighting fish that are heavy and going to put a lot of stress on lighter line, just because those guides run down the bottom of the rod. See, on a bait caster, the bait caster, the guides are up top, and if something's pulling down on the top guide, it's automatically going to want to twist that rod blank over. And so a bait casting rod is not a very good rod for light line that might break if you're fighting whatever fish you're fighting. Spinning rod, it just bends straight over, no twist, no anything else. It doesn't torque your rod, and it's just a really good fighting rod. The disadvantage of a spinning rod is efficiency and speed. I can make 2.5 to 3 casts in the amount of time that somebody with a spinning reel who's just as good at casting, but that much faster than they can with a spinning reel, just because there's so much more to getting ready to cast a spinning reel. The bait caster, I can make cast after cast, and the more cast you can make in a day, the more fish you catch. And so and another thing with a bait caster is a lot more accurate. I can pinpoint cast. I can hit something this big around at 25 to 30 feet, and I can only hit something this big around with a spinning rod. So bait caster to a spinning rod. And so that's your give and take. So it's definitely something to consider. But if you're going to go light line, always a spinning rod. All right, one more question. You guys be sure to hit thumbs up. If you haven't subscribed, hit the subscribe button and hit the little bell. And I don't know why people think it costs money to subscribe to YouTube. It is free. Yes, I think you got to sign up or something, but it doesn't mean you're starting a YouTube channel. It just means you're signing up, and then hit the subscribe button. There's still people that think it costs money. Let's see. Have you ever fished a nuclear power plant cooling lake? Yes, Lake Juliet. We were just talking about it a little while ago. Is a cooling lake, and it's got giant striped bass in it. I've got a picture from way back in the day of me holding a big, huge striper that I caught on a topwater Sammy, and I had the reactors right behind me, or the cooling towers right behind me. It was really, really cool. That one I fished the Savannah River, which has got a power plant on it. A bunch of other places. Yeah, dude, it's a lot of fun, especially in the wintertime. So, let's see. Oh, here's what I want to answer real quick. It says, have you heard any news about kayak tournaments here in Northwest Georgia with the coronavirus happening? Thanks for talking with it. Talking with me out on the lake. Oh, okay. What do they call it? Peach State Kayak Anglers. Look it up on Facebook. They're still holding tournaments. Kayak tournaments, because a lot of it's catch, photo, release, and it's done on the Tourney X app or done through text or whatever else. Everybody does. There's a little bit different, but you don't have to come in contact with anybody. So that's what's cool about kayak fishing and kayak tournaments, is because of Tourney X, because of that app, we can still hold tournaments. We just don't hold meetings. And so everybody goes fishing and does their thing, and we enter through online. That's why the KBF Challenge Series is so awesome, is because it's a month-long tournament, or not a month anymore, but it's 3 weeks out of the month. It starts on the 1st, ends around the 20th. You best 5 during that period of time. It's $35 to enter. It's awesome. And I'm doing the one for May right now, and I'll sign up for the one in June as soon as they post it. And they're just a lot of fun. And KBF's kicked it up a notch and offered a whole bunch of incentives to be able to fish it. But very, very cool. But yeah, we're still doing kayak tournaments. So, well, guys, I'm going to jump off. I'm about 11 minutes longer than I normally am. I really appreciate it. Love every one of you guys. Thanks for listening to me ramble for this long. I hope you learned something. Be sure to if you haven't subscribed, be sure to subscribe. Check out my website, flukemaster.com, for shirts and hats and a whole bunch of other Fluke Master stuff. Support the channel, support me. I really appreciate every one of them, and thank you for your support. You guys are awesome. But like I always say, be sure to introduce somebody to fishing. Introduce them to my channel. Let me help you teach them how to fish. More importantly, get out on the water, go out and catch some fish, and have a great day. We'll see you.